Anger does not solve problems. It fuels them. It makes you react before you think, speak before you understand, and act before you consider consequence. The Stoics did not see anger as strength. They saw it as weakness disguised in force. Anger is noise, and noise blocks clarity. In a world filled with provocation and frustration, the ability to remain calm is rare. It is also powerful. The Stoics were not emotionless. They were not cold. They were disciplined. They believed that anger, when left unchecked, corrupts reason. It takes over the soul. It becomes a master instead of a servant. And the one who is ruled by anger is never free. This video is a guide to identifying that angry version of yourself, understanding what feeds it, and learning how to replace it with calm, clarity, and strength. Every chapter will examine a specific principle. These are not abstract ideas. These are tools to apply in the heat of real life. When insulted, when wronged, when you feel the rising pressure, when your voice wants to rise and your fists want to clench. This is where Stoicism must live, not in theory, but in action. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Understand the nature of anger. Anger begins as a perception. It is not automatic. It follows judgment. The Stoics taught that impressions arise, but it is your judgment that determines your response. You are not angry because someone spoke harshly. You are angry because you judge their words as offensive, unjust, or threatening. Seneca wrote that anger is a temporary madness. The eyes swell, the voice rises, the breath shortens, the posture becomes tense, the heartbeat accelerates, the facial expression contorts, the body reflects the chaos taking place within the mind. Reason retreats. What remains is a state of internal disruption. This is a breakdown of judgment, a collapse of order. The person consumed by anger is no longer guided by clarity or choice. The decisions made in this condition lack precision. The words spoken during this state often carry unintended consequences. The damage caused is usually greater than the situation that triggered it. Seneca emphasized that this is not a demonstration of strength, but a visible loss of composure and restraint. When the mind is overtaken by rage, it loses the ability to evaluate consequences. Reason becomes silent. Judgment becomes distorted. The mind begins operating under the pressure of reaction, not reflection. The ability to pause disappears. The person loses awareness of options. They forget the broader view. They act within a narrow tunnel of emotion. Reflection becomes impossible. Distance from the moment is needed to think clearly, but anger removes that distance. In this condition, the person no longer weighs results. They act as if the emotion must be satisfied. The need to be heard, to retaliate, or to overpower becomes more important than understanding the situation. Anger wants movement. It wants noise. It wants to discharge its energy. This makes it difficult to listen, to learn, or to adjust. Conflicts that could have been resolved with patience often escalate under the pressure of this mindset. Threats are magnified. The mind assumes the worst and begins to act from fear disguised as strength. In this state, it is easier to insult, to accuse, to raise the voice, or to walk away from relationships that needed understanding rather than aggression. The Stoics observed this pattern and advised against living this way. They did not see anger as a useful guide. They saw it as a condition that damages the person who feels it more than the person it targets. They urged daily discipline and preparation to prevent this loss of clarity. They taught that you should not rely on emotion to carry you through difficulty, but instead train your character to remain composed under stress. They emphasized that reason must remain active even when provoked. They believed the ability to step back from emotion and see clearly was one of the highest forms of strength. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline daily. He reminded himself every morning that people would act in selfish and irrational ways. He did not expect fairness. He did not demand courtesy. He did not believe that the world owed him decency. He accepted that he would meet people who were ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, and rude. He did not view this as failure. He viewed it as part of the human condition. His aim was to stay centered, regardless of others. He trained his mind to expect these conditions, and this reduced their power to disturb him. This mental preparation became a kind of armor. When insult or conflict arrived, he had already rehearsed his reaction. He had already practiced the thought, "This is not new. This is not personal. This is part of life." By viewing the behavior of others through this lens, he limited its effect on him. He protected his energy. He focused on his duty. He remained in control of his own mind. He did not allow others to steal his attention or redirect his focus through provocation. That space between stimulus and response is essential. In that small gap, your trained mind can intervene. Even a short delay can make a difference. It is the space where reason has a chance to speak. It is where you can remember your values. It is where clarity can enter. That space is a shield against destructive habits. The Stoics valued it because it allowed the person to remain in control of themselves even when others lost control. The goal is not to feel nothing, but to act with awareness. The angry version of you does not use that space. It moves quickly. It acts on instinct. It tries to defend pride. It views disagreement as attack. It believes that being right is more important than being calm. It confuses interruption with disrespect. It assumes others are enemies, not people in error. It feels strong but is deeply reactive. In trying to gain control, it loses direction. It often causes more harm than the original issue. It turns small disagreements into lasting damage. It creates patterns of conflict that build resentment and fracture relationships. To begin dismantling that version of yourself, you must examine its thoughts. What stories does it tell you? What ideas does it repeat to justify its reactions? It may say things like, "They always do this to me," or "I can't let that go," or "I need to respond now, or I'll look weak." These are thoughts built around fear, ego, and insecurity. They do not serve your growth. They serve your emotional survival instinct. You must question them. The angry version of you assumes your peace depends on others. It believes that circumstances must be controlled before you can feel calm. It ties your emotional state to the behavior of other people. This removes your power. If someone else's action decides your mood, you have given away control. This is the root of reactivity. The Stoics rejected this idea. They taught that peace comes from within. They taught that the mind must be trained to stand on its own foundation. Your internal state is built by your perspective, your values, and your consistent choices. Your thoughts, not other people, shape your emotions. Your expectations, not the world, set the terms of your satisfaction. When you recognize this, you regain power. When you take full ownership of your interpretations, you gain control over your emotional direction. This is not easy, but it is possible. It requires training, review, and honesty. It requires a willingness to change the story you live by. You do not wait for others to behave better. You become better at responding. This shift from reaction to responsibility is the foundation of Stoic discipline. It moves you towards self-respect. It sharpens your character. It helps you rise above petty conflict and return to the work that matters. Killing the angry version of yourself begins with clarity. That clarity is strengthened through practice. The mind must be taught to return to reason even when emotion pulls hard in the other direction. That is the goal of Stoicism, a mind that holds its shape under pressure. Chapter 2. Detach identity from emotion. You are not your anger. It is a temporary emotional condition. It emerges under specific pressures and environmental triggers. It is a combination of physical reactions and mental interpretations. It may feel powerful in the moment, but it is not part of your core identity. It does not shape your entire character unless you allow it to. Many people confuse regular emotional reactions with fixed personality traits. They describe themselves as hot-headed or say things like, "That's just who I am." This language creates limitations. It builds a belief that change is impossible. When you label yourself based on anger, you reinforce patterns that do not serve your long-term development. The Stoics rejected this fixed view of temperament. They did not believe people were bound